Welcome to the Seeds of Wisdom series, brought to you by From a Loving Place with author Rachel Wolf. If you like deep, meaningful conversations, this is your place, so settle in and enjoy today's guest. Disclaimer: the Seeds of Wisdom digs into some deep subject matter. In order to plant a seed, we have to dig in the dirt. That's how we grow. If any of the subject matter feels like too much, it is important to seek your own mental health support. I did, and it's why I'm able to be here doing this today. Hello and welcome to Seeds of Wisdom, episode 18. I'm so grateful for anybody that's here today because I know that if you are here, it's exactly where you're meant to be. Now, I get to introduce today's guest. We are going to be talking about the seed of the art of non-attachment. And today's guest, Thoele, is her wisdom is so, her and my wisdom are so connected. If our books could be companion books, they would be. So it is such a pleasure to have her on. If you really want to dig into The Courage to Be Yourself, which is the book I just read of hers, I am telling you, it is at the heart of everything it takes to really just be able to project the person we want to show the world. So with that, I'm going to let her introduce herself, and so we can dive right in.
Hi, my writing name is Sue Patton Thoele, and I never really thought I would write. My first book was published when I was 48, so I had already been a therapist for many years and raised 4 kids, and was still, a couple were still staggering around getting out of the house at that time. But yeah, so I'm now a bunch older than that, and loving it. I told my husband the other day, I feel like I'm the empress of aging. I'm just so crazy about it. So and I think one of the reasons has to do a lot with stuff we'll be talking about today, Rachel. Yeah. Groundwork that has come to fruition, and yeah. What else would you like to know?
Oh, so how did you start writing? What was what got you started? Because you didn't mean to.
Well, I didn't mean to. I certainly didn't. I had read a book that I won't say what it is, and it was a self-help book, and I was leading at the time a women's group, and we had lots of different lifestyles in the group. There were several divorced, and there were several remarried, and there were several home people and career people, and I kept noticing these similarities. So I was reading this very popular self-help book at the time, and I was on a little retreat at Asilomar, California, and when I got to the end, I said to the author, not that she was there, of course, but I said, "Good God, you spent 300 pages telling me what's wrong with me, and I get it, but there's only 3 pages telling me what to do." And I tossed the book against the big old river rock fireplace and said, "If I ever write a book, I'm going to make it practical," and thought nothing of it,
Yeah.
But then the muse took hold of me. I mean, I literally wasn't able not to write this. And let's see, where is it? I just had it. So anyway, I can't find it now. Oh, here it is. Okay, there. So this is it. This is its iteration now. And I was writing on a yellow legal pad. This was before I even had a computer, and I literally cut and pasted. And the thing that I had noticed is in my women's group is that we all had similar limitations, And we all had a difficult time setting boundaries, and we all had a difficulty being kind to ourselves and loving ourselves and honoring who we were and really understanding how awesome we are. I think women are so awesome. And at one point we were talking about it in the group, and I said, it's like nobody has the courage to be themselves. And one of the gals said, that's your title. And that was the title. And then after that one came out, we self-published that one, and then it was picked up by a publisher. And after that, I just had the bug, and I had a private practice at that time, and so I had lots and lots of examples, and lots of stories, and and I laughed. Okay, so when I first was sending the completed but not really edited manuscript, I was getting ready to go into the post office, and I just thought, oh my God, why am I doing this? That stuff that we question ourselves. Why do I think I have anything to say? Blah blah. And had a little anxiety attack, the only one I've ever really had in my life. But I stuffed it or gave it to the person. And I was just sending it to an editor. I wasn't even sending it to anybody else. And I came home, and in the mail, and my former husband, I never heard from him in terms of mail. And I had a letter from him. And in that letter, he'd been cleaning out some stuff, and it was my college transcripts with all but one C in English. Oh my God, just the totally wrong time. And so it wasn't as if I had a bunch of self-confidence when I was doing that, but I really knew that women needed that. We just so need the courage to be yourself, because, and I mentioned this to you earlier, I really believe that women's values and women's qualities are one of the major things that's going to save our world. Of those qualities of complementation and support and acceptance and embracing and inclusivity and respect. So I think the world's going to be a better place the more we can be who we are, which, as I said, is really awesome.
Just got chills again. And for all of you who are just tuning in, even before we even started recording, I had already gotten chills twice. So this is going to be a great conversation. So let's go in. Let's talk about the art of non-attachment and what that means to you.
Okay, well, I don't know about your generation, but my generation, and where I was born and raised in the Midwest, we were really filled with the idea and the ideal, actually, at that time, of sacrifice and sacrifice for others, and very little awareness of what that does to the self. And I'm talking, big self and small self. So that's what we learned to do. We learned that everybody was more important, and everybody's needs and desires, especially in my generation, especially men, that their needs and desires and contributions were really more important than mine. And so non-attachment is the healthy side of caring. Caring is we need that. We all need caring. We need to be able to do it because it feeds our soul. And I think that we're basically intrinsically loving, and we want to help and serve, even though that's kind of a loaded word, but serve without sacrifice. And it might not you might physically need to sacrifice some stuff, but when it comes from the heart, when we're really not over caring out of a sense of obligation, but caring in a way. Okay, let me move back a little bit. Over caring is a function of the brain, our thinking, our feelings, and fear. And an awful lot of our over caring is kind of an unbalanced empathetic tendency. And so, and that has a lot of sacrifice in it. We sacrifice ourselves for other people because we fear that we're not as good, or that we should, or in my case, I was tremendously fearful of rejection. And so a great way not to be rejected was to kowtow and to do unto others what I wouldn't even consider doing with myself, really, at that time. That's not true anymore, of course, but and so non-attachment is more a wellspring. Non-attachment, caring from non-attachment comes from the heart. And it's not a sacrificial thing. It's something that we really want to do. And very, very importantly, it doesn't drain us. Overcare drains our reservoirs. Caring from a non-attached, I like to add the word compassionate in front of that. Mm-hmm. Compassionate non-attachment, because we can, and I did non-attachment on purpose. And detach to me is too much. Yeah. Non-attachment is more this, holding. And the universe has given me a lot of opportunity to hone this skill. And one of my biggest opportunities is that my oldest child is an alcoholic. And this is a gorgeous, beautiful, brilliant man. And I spent a lot of years overcaring. I spent a lot of years thinking it was my fault. And the reality of it is, Rachel, it probably is a little bit. I was 22 when he was born. Just a bumpkin, really, with absolutely no clue of any kind of self-care or anything like that. But I did the best I could. And it's been a long, long time to forgive myself for, what were probably mistakes. I mean, of course. Because I was also so fearful for him, and I didn't trust him. And that's one of the things that compassionate non-attachment has. It's a heart quality or action. And so it also embodies trust. We trust. I don't mean trust that he'll be better, or trust that he'll begin to make good choices, or anything like that. I trust him, big H. Okay. Soul. And I had this, the world, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, gave me the sweetest bit of grace. And it wasn't that long ago. It was about 2 years ago. It was 2 years, because the little dog was a puppy, and I had her out in what I call the piddle pen. And I was thinking about my son, because of course I do a lot. And I was thinking about him, and boing, up here, right here, his face appeared in this beautiful kind of sun, and rays were just going shooting out of it. And he was grinning, and he didn't wink, but that was the energy. Mm-hmm. And he's very funny, so that energy, and I'm getting chills when I'm telling you this story, but and I went, oh my God, honey, I think this is your soul. And eventually the puppy piddled and we came in, but I have that. it was one of those incredible gifts that I could hang my trust of him. What do I know? I mean, this may be exactly the life that his soul needs and that we as his family need for our growth. Yeah.
And that I love how you wrap that up, because that's one of the things that I tell myself, because of my family's experiences, I have to say they're getting the path they need to have. I have the path I need to have. Otherwise it wouldn't be. And it's just like that reminder that plays for me, because I know there's a bigger purpose to it all. I know that without my traumas, I wouldn't be able to be
Mhm,
here and
mhm,
helping others. So to
mhm.
me,
Exactly.
that is a huge gift,
Mhm,
that, I got the art of words and speaking my truth
mhm,
so that it can help somebody else.
mhm,
And I love that. And it brought me so much compassion for other people,
mhm,
is because you don't know what somebody else is going through. So
mhm.
I want to read a part of The Courage to Be Yourself, only because for me, it really wrapped up the beauty of the art of non attachment. I decided to detach myself. I withdrew from the conflict between us, not in anger, resentment, or with a feeling of rejection, but in order to allow him the space to take time to take responsibility for his own feelings if he chose to. I sequestered myself with a tape recorder, cried some cleansing tears, wrote in my journal, and made some notes for this book. Instead of trying to convince my husband to change, I changed. I stepped out of the victim role, gave up being a responsibility sponge, and took care of myself. And that to me was like, because that's the type of stuff I do. And it's just like, that is part of the most rewarding part, even though it can be challenging at the time. And like you went on to say, our bodies can have a different reaction, but there's like this inner peace to it
Mhm,
when
mhm.
and to
Yeah.
know I'm not reacting from my nervous system, from my fear, from my, all those things, and just going, this is what's best for the situation. I mean, it's such a healthy relationship tool
It is.
for
And you
any of our
used,
relationships.
any of them, yeah.
Yeah.
And you used a magic word. You said not react.
Yeah.
And yeah, and um, overcaring has control, reactivity, and well, it can also have real kind of piston for because if you really want to control and you're reactive and resistant, then if people don't do what you know is right or would be best, um, then frustration and resentment come in. So
Yeah.
so non-compassionate, non-attachment is not loaded with all that stuff that takes us away from who we really are at the very blessed core of ourselves.
Yes. So for the people who are listening on any other source but YouTube, because we will go into Beyond the Seed. But for anybody who's listening, do you have anything else you'd like to say about what the art of non-attachment gives us when we start practicing it?
Yeah, I would. I would love it. It's an amazing tool for self-compassion. And one of the reasons is that compassionate non-attachment allows us to stay in the present moment. Overcare and attachment are almost always based in fear and centered in the past or the future. So if we can come back and we can lovingly, as you that's a great thing that you quoted, thank you, lovingly to ourselves, if not them. I mean, we're not going to love them all the time. I mean, them ain't lovable all the time, and neither are we. But if we can, in a loving way, or at least not a projecting icky stuff way, move non-attached, then we are staying in the present. And the present, there's all sorts of little sayings about the present, but it is where our authenticity lies. And our relaxation and our peace of mind and heart.
Yes, that's the peace, is when we get out of the future, get out of what we think the future should look like. And unvictimize ourselves from our past.
Wouldn't it be great if you could just detox
Yeah.
and just, walk through like one of those things at the airport, and it would whatever you just said.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's great, and for people who are on this journey, even if they've been, we've been doing it for decades, it doesn't matter. We're still works in progress. We still get faced with these things and have to practice. And I always remember to tell myself and others that, one, so I'm not hard on myself and beat myself up when don't live up to all the things that I write about, because this is my process. Writing's my process. But I never want to see people put me on a pedestal that they can't reach, because that, for me, we were talking about that self-help book stuff. When I first got into self-help books, the ones that I had read were up here and I was here, and I couldn't ever figure out how to get to where they were, and so I beat myself up because of it. So that, for me, I did the same kind of thing. If I ever write a self-help book, it's not going to be like that. So thank you for anybody who tuned in, and we are going to go beyond the seat. So if you want to watch more, watch on YouTube at From a Loving Place. And thank you so much for being here with us. Okay, so let's dive deeper into this. I know we have had this conversation, but the freedom that comes with non-attachment. Let's get into that some, because I know for me, when I was in a toxic relationship, I had to get to a place of peace before I could release it.
Release what?
The relationship.
Okay.
To unvictimize myself,
right,
enough to empower myself. And that was all this process. It was that courage to be myself and to go, this is not who I am, but this is who I am, and understand the healthy boundaries that came with that. And they came naturally with it once you're there. I didn't have to force it. I didn't go, I deserve better. Because I felt like when I used to say that, it was pointing a finger in the mirror, but I wasn't treating myself better.
It's also, though, part of the groundwork.
Yeah.
I think when we first start, if we're using affirmations, or if we're changing the way we talk to ourselves inside our heads, very often we don't believe it at first, but we just need to do it, to have the commitment with ourselves that that we will do that. I remember I used to, when I was, still pretty far away from where I am now. Of course, I'm also old, so I think it takes practice, and I've had a lot of time to do that. But I would go for a walk by a creek down here somewhere, and I would sing things like, I I love me, a bushel and a peck, a bushel and a peck, and a hug around my neck. And I might be crying, and I might be feeling so guilty about something that I had said or not done, or, all the things that we guilted ourselves about. And, but the commitment was there. I wanted to be happy, and I wanted to be healthy. And I knew that it was a process of rewiring my brain. My brain was fully conditioned to go, oh, Sue, bleh, oh, bad Sue, and so so if we were wiring some sort of electrical gizmo, they probably don't have wires anymore, but we take them off and put them back, and that's what we do with our brain. We just keep repeating, because repetition seals the new pathway. It creates, just like you can imagine, if you have a little, like we live on a creek, and you can walk down beside it. Now, if people hadn't been walking down beside it before, the weeds would be too high for us to go on. It's all of us saying, oh, this would be fun to walk closer to the creek. And so, and we people and our feet and our dogs' feet have created a path, and that's still the same. That's what we're doing in our brain. So it doesn't matter if you believe it or not when you're starting out. You will. I was just in the shower this morning. It was amazing. I was thinking, oh my God, loving myself. I don't always talk nice to myself, but my husband said, Sue, that's not good self-talk. But most of the time, that self-talk is more of a joke, like, oh, very smart, dearie dear, that kind of thing. But I was thinking, oh my God, Sue, being nice to yourself and loving yourself is no longer second nature. It's first nature, which it's natural. I'm a slow learner, Rachel. So, at almost 83, that probably happened this morning in the shower, but I've been working on it for decades, more decades than you've been alive, probably. And so it's just, if we could be, well, a long, long time ago, I adopted the phrase, live gently with yourself and others. The reason I adopted it is because I didn't, and I needed to, and I do now.
One of the exercises that you have in your book that I absolutely loved was the self-talk saboteur exorcism. Because my book talks, whole books is about transforming that self-talk. So when I saw that, it was just right up my alley, but I'd never seen anything like it. And I just thought it was such a great, because to me, we're all going to take stuff in differently. So however we take it in that works, it's what's right for us. And I thought about that. For some people, this might be the exact kind of thing they need to see it, have that imagery of that, to see that, yes, that we're pulling out this negative, like, critic from taking over our lives, instead of it's, a being, but that being is us. So I just loved it. So will you talk more about that exercise?
Oh gosh, I would if I knew which one it was. So yeah.
So you were talking about to have the affirmation, but then have all the
Oh,
sabotaging messages that
okay.
sabotage it.
Okay. So it was a writing exercise, right?
Yep.
Uh-huh. Okay. That was a long time ago.
I know.
Yeah. So, and basically, I think it's like when you write something down, like, let's just take, I'm going to write a book. Okay. You can't do that, or you don't even know where a comma goes. That's the saboteur. What do you think? I mean, now especially, what do you, book selling has changed completely. How are you ever going to find a publisher? Write it down. Bless it. I don't probably said, I probably didn't bless it in this book, because that's something that I have discovered really helps cement what we're trying to do, is to bless what we don't like, even, and the stuff we do like. Because, you know, if we say that to ourselves, Rachel and whomever's listening, we probably had really good reason, or we were taught. And I'm not saying that our parents or anybody taught us to do this. No, I don't think very many parents go, you shouldn't be kind to yourself. They just didn't know. When I was growing up, psychology was like, in the Midwest, we didn't know about it hardly. And now we know so much more about the brain, and we can understand why we chose to do things like that, because the brain was kicked into gear over some things. So to bless that which is, it kind of strips it of its power, because when there's something that is that we don't care for, and we try to push it away and resist it, that's all based in fear and control. And those just don't work, you know, really, to tell you the truth. As I say, I'm really practical. So when you can get those things out, here's what my other person is saying. I love the concept of subpersonalities. I think now they have moved it into the family systems kind of therapy. But when I first had that learning, it was about subpersonalities. And those were like the orchestra instruments, and those were the different aspects of ourselves that we could identify with. And we have all those different selves, mainly because it's fun, but also because they're there for some good reason, you know. And all of them, in my opinion, in all of the subpersonalities that we have, there is a kernel that we want to be able to have unfurl. The seed, there is a seed that will burst into some sort of flowerdom when it feels safe enough to do so, when it has been healed enough to do so, when it has been accepted enough to do so, and embraced enough to do so.
Well, and that's what Seeds of Wisdom's all about. You know,
That's what I figured.
It's about understanding that we all have our own internal gardens, and I call them the gardens of our soul. And we can plant, we can weed, we can see a beautiful tree in somebody else's garden, try to plant it in ours, and it doesn't fit, and that's okay. And we can pull it out and plant something else. But it's understanding that this is our garden. This is our garden to work with. So we have to put in the work and the practice of nurturing and caring through compassion, through love, to know what we want in our gardens, to be able to spot the weeds and tell them from the flowers. Because, you know, and sometimes those can be tricky, because, you know, the way we're taught in childhood can sometimes be a weed but have pretty flowers on it. So, you know,
Or be medicinal.
Yeah, but it's like, I always see it as, you know, those sharp pangs where people try to shame us into doing things, where that's a weed, but they try to disguise it in love and act like it's a flower. And, you know, it's about seeing that. And I like that in your book, you talk a lot about bringing up the awareness and the importance of seeing it first. And
I think awareness is the first step in almost anything, but it is definitely the first step in changing. Like I've got a 3A thing, and then I added another one. aware, acknowledge. In other words, share something with somebody safe that you've become aware of, and then accept, because so much of our stuff gets stuck because we don't accept. We don't, and then alter. Like, for instance, one of my major subpersonalities when I first learned about them was somebody that I named Ms. Perfection. And I'm really visual.
Mhm.
So if you imagine a combination of the worst librarian you've ever met and Nurse Ratched, that was Ms. Perfection. But the seed inside her was discernment. And that was a surprise to me. I mean, I thought she was just had to make everything perfect, and if everything wasn't perfect, which of course nothing is. And so, but being able to discern not perfection, but authentism and importance. You know, what's important, what's authentic.
Yeah. Well, and I
And
think when you're talking about the acceptance, when we don't accept, and I talk about this a lot in my work, is we can often go to the lengths of self-abusing,
yes,
because that's when we shame ourselves. And if
yes.
we haven't talked to that trusted person, and that is such a key word, trusted person. When I've talked to people about this, about people who like us share our stories publicly, it's because
Mhm,
we've already processed it. we're
mhm.
not we're not sharing our this isn't us raw. We've shared with our trusted people, because the thing is if we haven't, the people who don't share with their trusted people first, they share it publicly, and then somebody attacks them, then they can take that and turn that into that non-acceptance and shaming themselves. Oh, maybe I didn't, you know what I mean? Because they haven't processed what they put out there, and they haven't had that trusted person. So I always go to it. It's so important to have trusted people to talk to first. Like, process it out. Don't just
Yeah, and your main
share it.
person is you.
Yeah.
Your main person is that you can be trusted not to attack you. And then yeah, I think it's smart. I think it's wonderful to be transparent, but I also think that um, we need to be safe. And if we share before we're ready, we would naturally not be safe. Now there are places to that, like, good grief. I can remember going to groups where we were on the floor with you know stuff that we were banging on phone books and big rubber sort of hoses, kind of,
Mhm.
and just screaming and yelling it, and that's getting that energy out, because the energy, the wounded energy, the frightened energy, needs to be out. I really believe that my mom was just wonderful. I was just thinking the other day, my God, she's been dead for 47 years. It seems so weird, I can't believe it. Or 37. And but she didn't share. She was of a generation that just didn't share. She had multiple bouts with cancer. She broke her back. Um, she died of liver cancer. And I think that if she had been less stoic, and the last year and a half of her life she shared with me, but she hadn't shared for 72 years. And I think that that energy has to go somewhere, Rachel.
Oh, yeah.
So if we don't get it out with hoses beating on phone books, or screaming and yelling in the car, or whatever, or talking to trusted people, and therapy if you need it, please, 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 that, yeah, with somebody that you resonate with. The relationship between therapist and client is just ultimately important. because we want our energy. We want to have our energy at our disposal to be able to act from our hearts and act from our authenticity. And it's asking too much of ourselves if we're carrying around loads and loads and loads of hurt and woundedness, and it hasn't been healed.
Well, and one of the concepts I talk about in my book is giving from a loving place, which means a self-loving place.
Yes.
We're not giving to gain worth from somebody
Yes.
else or
Yeah.
for what we're doing or whatever it is, because how we were talking earlier about not feeling depleted. That's what depletes us, is when we do it to try to gain something. And that's where our inner martyrs come out, is if we're doing for others what they can do for themselves, because it's not from that healthy place. It's from that attaching to somebody so tight that we're sitting here going, love me, love me, love me, love me because I'm so good to you, instead of saying, love me, love me, love me because I'm so good to you, to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
we can say no when we mean no. We can say yes when we mean yes, and our boundaries become so naturally clear and empowering if we can give from a loving place. And you talk a lot about that with the projections too.
Yes.
Is how we really have to watch what we're projecting.
Self-awareness is just gargantuanly huge.
Yeah.
Self-awareness without judgment, or with as little as possible, because we're human. We stuff our souls and spirits into this little body, which sometimes we wish it was smaller, but it's just this body, and that's a real constricted place. So we really, really need. Do you remember the little cartoon Ziggy?
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
So I was blessed to have a spiritual mother when I was, I think I was 23 or something when she came into my life, and she was there for many, many years, and she was very bright and wonderful and spiritual, and I was very fortunate. And she and I were in a little gift shop once, and there was a poster on the wall, and it was Ziggy looking up at a cloud, which supposedly was God, and saying, "It ain't easy being human, God." And she loved that because she was about as evolved as anybody I've ever met. And still, she had a lot of human stuff she had to put up with and move through. And she got dementia at the end of her life. And it was an incredible gift to me, and I think to her children, but for me, the gift was, she didn't remember anything of what she'd done in her life or anything else. She remembered that we had a relationship, but what I got was, all that was left was the love. Nothing. There was no, there was, there was some physical stuff, of course, and there were the night terrors that sometimes come with dementia and so forth. But all that was left in what she was giving out or feeling toward herself was the love. Got to start with that love here. We really do. This is our major love target.
I agree. It's and talking about breaking old patterns and old belief systems, a lot of people come from that thought process that self-love is selfish.
Yeah.
Self-care is selfish.
Yeah.
But I love the analogy that I heard of, we have to put the oxygen mask on ourselves first. We can't help others from a whole place if we haven't put our oxygen mask on ourselves first. And what do you think about that? Because that actually comes a lot from the generation that you were talking about, of that it's selfish.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Well, I think that once again, what is ingrained in us is hard to ungrain from us. So once more the gentleness, once more the commitment, once more I love me a bushel and a peck, even when you don't. One of the other things is I've come a little sentence that I think goes really well with non-attachment, a compassionate non-attachment is, and I've used this with my son. We're in crisis right now with him, and or I mean, he's in crisis, I guess, but where the family is, of course, around. When I gently but honestly ask myself, when I'm thinking about how I'm responding or feeling, is this good for me? And if it's not, and we're always learning. So this morning, I'll tell you about this morning. So I woke up and he was right there, and I began to feel that close down in the throat and the constriction in my chest and so forth. And I thought, okay, is this good for me? No. Does it help him? Not at all. So because non attachment is a heart thing, it's always really good. The statement, energy flows where attention goes. So it's always good to energize the heart. So what I did is I just breathed in the top of my head and let it kind of land right here. And then just imagine breathing out that energy to him. In, cherish it a little bit, and then out. Now, is that good for me? That is good for me. Does it help him? It can't hurt. Yeah. It activates my heart. And then I added a couple of my friends, one who has COVID and one who has a pneumonia. It's just that activating the heart, Rachel, I have found that to be just a linchpin for me, a linchpin for my freedom from the fear, the worry. I was a class A worrier, and now when I remember, and I don't remember the first nanosecond. Probably it takes a while for me to be scrumming around in the old energy, but when I do remember and I can activate my heart, however that is, I mean, maybe it's tapping, maybe if you've heard about the tapping.
The thymus, you were brought up that in
Yeah,
too.
maybe it's that, maybe it's the breathing, maybe it's just holding your heart and loving it. One of the things I love to do is in Missouri, we had overalls. Do you remember overalls or coveralls? They had a little pocket right here. And I just see myself dressed in those, and this is my heart pocket. And when I or somebody else needs some extra attention, I just imagine that I've tucked them right here, and I just pat them every now and then. Just say, you're okay. It's, if we would treat ourselves, if we would be the best mother to ourselves that we've been to our kiddos and our pets and our friends, how lovely would that be?
I agree. And I love that you brought in the physical effects of it. And what happens to our throats and our chests and the difference it feels when we know we're working with our heart. It doesn't feel tight. When we're working from fear, it's tight. When we're working from worry, it's tight. And there's this expansive feeling that comes from the love, even if we're doing something hard. It's this amazing, it doesn't mean that we're going to be happy in that moment and feel positive, but it's just this expansive, this is, like you were saying, this is what's best for me right now. This is what's best for the situation right now. This is the best I can give right now.
And the beautiful thing about that is, we can always, I don't care where we are, who we're with, we can always activate our heart energy. Yes. If we just remember. I had another experience, and that was, I wrote a text somebody wrote and to my son, and he wrote back, that really ticked me off, and I sat with it, and I thought, well, I mean, I thought of a few things I could say, but I chose not to. And I was driving to an art class, first one I've been to since COVID started, yesterday, and I just pulled over to the side of the road, and I texted, I don't know what to say. And his answer back was, I know you were just trying to help, but it took me off guard. I mean, the sweetest communication I've had with him for months, actually. And it was just the truth. And I know I couldn't ghost him because that just didn't feel authentic. But I also didn't know what to say. So I thought, well, I'll tell him that. I don't know what to say. And but I didn't feel pissed off. Well, maybe for a few seconds there for a while, but not all the time. And by the time I got to answering, I wasn't pissed off at all. I was just puzzled with what I could say that could still keep a connection, but not a disconnect, not more of a disconnection. And just being honest, I don't know what to say, turned out to be right. But it didn't come with strings attached.
Yeah.
If there hadn't been a response, okay. Because I was able to answer from my authenticity that wasn't burdened with judgment or anything I wanted to get from him. You know, like you said, if we give to get, we're setting ourselves up for failure.
Will you, before we end, will you show people the thymus tap and talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's such a great technique that can just, it's just a quick helper.
Yeah. I just, basically the best thing I can tell you guys is Google tapping. But it's, you just right here, and there's a bunch of places. So when you Google, you'll see it. It's just, what it does is it just activates the glands and the heart area and under the arms and stuff like that. It's a wonderful technique because it's just, you're doing something. We want to do something, and sometimes we're in a place, but you can almost always just tap. Nobody's going to say, my God, she's a crazy person, she's tapping, plus probably everybody knows about it now, but do Google it if you don't know about it. Tapping. I had a wonderful healing once, many years ago, with a friend of mine who had just learned about it, who was a therapist also. And it was just a whole change in attitude that I had about a certain person. And just so my body, my emotions knew they wanted that change, and my mind and my heart also, but my body was just still holding on to it. So that it released. Yeah.
Well, and I've been studying that. It's called emotional freedom technique for anybody who's looking for it, and tapping. And I just read a book on energy therapy and EFT, and Donna Eden is really great at, if people need physical exercises, like you want a physical exercise to do just in that pause period to help not react and respond from a place where we're more centered and grounded in what is best for this moment. I found that those techniques between the tapping and the energy work have really helped me keep me from getting into the overwhelm too. And because I know for me, because I have PTSD, if my nervous system goes into effect and my fight, freeze, fawn starts, I'm not going to respond. I'm going to react. So these are things that help me slow down enough to come from a grounded place where I can give lovingly, both to myself and to others. And I found that that's so important. Is there anything else you'd like to say to wrap up our conversation?
Oh, this has just been so much fun.
has.
I really liked it. It was very much fun. I really appreciate the work that you do. I really appreciate that you're putting what you've learned through your experiences, which were hard, out in the world so that the path can be clearer for somebody else. And I just want to say, and I really believe all humans are awesome, but I really think women are really awesome. So I just want to say we're so into it. We're so willing to take responsibility for our own stuff and for healing our own stuff. And I think that is a major influence that needs to spread, so that everybody can give themselves permission to heal and shine like they really can. They have the capacity to.
And chills once again to end this wonderful conversation. Thank you. And as I told you before we even started, reading your book helped me know that yes, I am exactly on the path I'm meant to be. I'm doing what I'm meant to do. And it was that reiteration of this is the truth we need to get to. So thank you. And for anybody listening, if you are here, you're meant to be. So trust that. Make sure to follow the links that accompany this episode. You will learn a lot more about today's guest and see what they have going on now. You will also get all the links to follow them on their journeys if this seed resonates with you. Come back next week for another Seed of Wisdom. If you loved what you saw or listened to, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.